Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz's Town Hall. She's going to say a few quick words, and then we're going to jump right in and start taking questions. Just a quick reminder, and you'll hear this often tonight. Please type in your questions into the comment field of the platform that you're watching from, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. With that, Congresswoman, do you mind kicking us off?
Thank you so much, Dave, and good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining my town hall tonight. I hope you're spending the holiday with loved ones and friends and that all of you get some much needed rest. It's been a year, and let's face it, it's been a very stressful and more expensive one for most of us, unfortunately. Frustratingly, there's a Republican healthcare crisis that's about to unfold on New Year's Day, which will only make all of this worse. Food, rent, home insurance and utility prices are up, and now healthcare coverage costs are about to soar due to Republican refusal to work with Democrats to extend the tax credits that help lower premiums. So I want to get all of us together tonight and discuss those challenges. Many of you have already sent in healthcare questions, but I also want to share a few key accomplishments that I was able to secure this year, which hopefully will make life a little safer and better for all of us. By the end of the night, I'll also try to preview a few things that I'll be working on in 2026. But mainly I want to provide answers to your questions and hear what's on your mind. So please submit those questions now in the comments section of whatever platform you're watching, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Before we get going though, I do want to say a few brief words about the violence we saw over the weekend in Australia and at Brown University. Sadly, I fear these horrific incidents reflect the continued escalation of anti-Semitism and mass gun violence in recent years. And until we fully confront both of these problems, they'll fuel more deadly tragedies like this into our lives. My heart goes out to all of the families, and for all the victims, may their memory be a blessing. I can't imagine what they're all going through right now, but I promise you I'm working on both of these public threats, which we'll touch on more in a bit. With that, let me tell you what's going on right now in Washington. Republican leaders in the House and Senate still refuse to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. That means millions of Americans will likely lose their health care coverage to start off 2026. It's estimated that about 2,000 folks in my district alone will lose coverage. When that's combined with the Medicaid cuts in the big ugly law that Republicans snuck through this summer, as many as 83,000 individuals in Florida 25 will lose coverage. And it gets worse. Millions more Americans will see their health insurance prices soar. Here at home, that's 203,000 people in my district who will see Affordable Care Act price spikes. This will force countless parents and seniors into an ugly choice. Do they keep the lights on and buy enough groceries, or do they pay for a much more expensive health insurance policy? That's not a choice that anyone should have to make. Or worse yet, will they end up with no coverage at all? Even if you're not on an ACA plan, as the Republican healthcare crisis unfolds, it will likely impact your wallet. That's because this Republican healthcare decision will remove millions of people from the Affordable Care Act insurance pools. So that means everyone with private or employer-based plans, we will also see big coverage hikes in 2026 because these insurers will soon have far fewer ACA customers, and they'll just shift higher costs to the rest of us. The bottom line is this means millions of people will be one diagnosis away from bankruptcy, or worse, they'll miss a vital diagnosis because they can't afford to see a doctor. Now, I'll be blunt about it. People will needlessly die because they won't have health insurance. As a breast cancer survivor, I know firsthand what it can mean to put off preventative screenings. When caught early, breast cancer has a 99% survival rate. If women no longer have health insurance and decide to put off their annual screening because they can't afford to go and actually get those screenings, their chance of beating cancer tragically is diminished. This is an unacceptable situation, and also an unnecessary one. To cover up this inaction, Republicans served up some stale holiday leftovers of failed past policies this week, and not one of them would seriously lower your healthcare costs, and they're not even going to become law. So to recap, just weeks after Republicans triggered a 2-month government shutdown, which they all treated as a paid vacation, not one serious vote to lower your household costs will have taken place on the House floor anytime this year. It is infuriating. I know it is. But that's what we're up against. That means as 2026 arrives, We'll all still feel squeezed by higher grocery prices, soaring utility and housing bills, and Trump's tariff-inflated holiday gift prices. But I want you to know Democrats are united to extend the ACA tax credits, and we've been able to get a few more moderate Republicans to get behind our plan to do it. If Speaker Johnson put the 3-year extension on the floor today that was sponsored by Leader Hakeem Jeffries, which has 218 signatures to force it to the floor, it would pass. Speaker Johnson is refusing to do that. But time is running out. ACA open enrollment ends January 15th, and I'll be working nonstop on this until then and afterward, because the problem is not going away. I know firsthand if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And when this mass loss of healthcare coverage hits families, there's going to be real pain and real outrage. And Republicans will feel it too. Healthcare and being able to afford it is not a partisan issue. And so perhaps they'll finally join us to take real action. Plus, don't forget, elections are coming up next year, and we can change this inflationary path we're on. And there's a model that we can follow to turn things around. That's why I want to share some of my success stories with you from just this year alone. These are all really good things for our families, which will make all of our lives a little better. In 2025, I worked 24/7 on a number of critical fronts. For instance, I fought back against cruel Trump budget cuts, and I clawed and scrapped to bring solid services and projects back home. Excuse me. A common theme in what I've been able to deliver is that they all offer layers of protection to keep our families safe. One example is in our House funding bill. I was able to get $2.5 million for pool safety programs to prevent drowning. And we really need this in Florida because 2025 was the worst year for drownings in our state in nearly 2 decades. Another example like this, the Protect Our Children Reauthorization Act passed the House and the Senate and is headed to the President's desk as I speak. This legislation modernizes the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force program. I was the lead House sponsor on this bill, and it will help us to better track down and prosecute online child sexual predators. Another protective layer I successfully secured is a $30 million increase for the Nonprofit Security Grant Program and an $8.5 million increase for the Holocaust Survivor Assistance Program in House funding bills. When these become law, it will help keep our synagogues, community spaces, and houses of worship safer. It will also ensure that we provide resources to our aging Holocaust survivor population, who are among the last of these remarkable and resilient people on Earth. Some other big wins I had was to secure House funding for $9 million for breast cancer awareness campaigns, $10 million for the Alcee Hastings Advanced Cancer Screening Program, and $5.2 million to support health research projects at FAU, NSU, and FIU. These wins help our local universities, and over time, they'll keep us all a little healthier. And while securing or bringing these federal funds home is very helpful, protecting existing funding can also be just as critical. That's why I proudly led 165 Democrats, unions, and advocacy groups to oppose proposed cuts to Social Security disability benefits that the Trump administration was pushing. After we mounted our opposition, Trump abandoned his plan. So please know, I will always protect Social Security and Medicare for you. I've had a lot of other funding and policy wins, and I'll share more of those with you as we go on to tonight, but I want to hear from all of you now. So I am ready for the questions. So Dave, you can take it away.
Great. We're going to try to cover a lot of turf tonight because you've got a lot of questions. So the first one that I've got here is from Genevieve in Sunrise. She wants to know, basically, what's the overall status of Social Security in Florida? And we had a similar concern raised by Janet in Hollywood, and she sort of echoed what Genevieve was asking, but also put a little finer point on it by asking about what are privatization prospects looking like for Social Security. So can you just sort of address both of those issues, Social Security writ large, but also maybe the privatization issue here in Florida?
Sure. I mean, I think we all remember the president promising repeatedly that he would never touch Social Security, that he would protect it, but unfortunately, his administration has done exactly the opposite. I mean, we have seen his administration do everything but protect Social Security benefits and instead put your benefits at risk. I helped secure the largest expansion of Social Security benefits in decades. Trump attempted the largest Social Security benefit cut in history. Trump tried to Trump tried, it's like a tongue twister, Trump tried to gut benefits for disabled recipients, as I just mentioned. He attacked the integrity of Social Security to pave the way for future cuts, and he would have torn away benefits for 400,000 elderly disability benefit recipients. So I led 165 Democrats alongside other labor unions and workers' organizations to fight and express outrage to the administration directly about these proposed cuts. And eventually, because there was overwhelming opposition, the administration and the president had to abandon that proposal, and we were able to successfully protect your Social Security disability, making sure that that you've paid what you've paid into Social Security comes out the other side as the benefits that you've worked for and earned is absolutely essential. And making cuts like the president proposed is outrageous, unacceptable, and unnecessary. And I will continue to always fight to protect and preserve Social Security.
Great, thanks. I think that addresses some of those concerns. We saw a lot of different comments and questions related to corruption taking place within the Trump administration. But I think that of all those that came in, Dan in Weston sort of sharpened it and said, what can we do to curb the corruption that we see coming out of the Trump administration? And how can we make Americans aware about how rampant it is? So do you mind tackling Dan's question from Weston?
Sure. I mean, the culture of corruption by this administration is very, very real. The list of his misdeeds, which is a minor term for it, is far too long, but the lowlights that I can include are at least $1 billion in payoffs to his own family crypto holdings, a dozen foreign family business deals. He sold off pardons to the highest bidders, including drug dealers, terrorist funders, January 6th traders, and fraudsters who stole people's pensions. I mean, you just cannot make this up. He sought a $400 million jet for a new Air Force One from Qatar, which they delivered. And it's just the list of self-dealing and corruption and literally trying to line his and his family's pockets as a result of serving as president is not only unprecedented, it's immoral, illegal, and as far as what we can do about it, right now, while the Republicans are still in the majority, anyone who is as concerned as I am about the Trump culture of corruption should reach out to the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, and demand that hearings be held. The Republican majority here in the House of Representatives is not holding the administration accountable. They're not asking any questions. It's astonishing to me, particularly with these pardons and some of the corporate deals that the administration is making, particularly the foreign deals with other countries. Those are normally prohibited, and the practice is certainly not to have a president be able to line his own pockets. We certainly are going to need to change the law when Democrats are in the majority and have a lot more accountability with the legislative branch, making sure that we can put some accountability measures in place and stop the president's ability from, any future president's ability from being able to get rich off of serving in office. But in addition to that, you need to continue to spread and share the culture of corruption and the specifics about these deals to the public, because as we turn into the election year, it's going to be important for people to know just how concerning the Republicans, but particularly this president's corrupt actions are, and how he's used public office to enrich himself.
Thanks, Congresswoman. I appreciate that. That's some good advice. And I think that once the gavel gets in Democrats' hands, that scenario is really going to change. I want to just take this moment, if I could, to remind folks who are watching that if they have a question that you want to ask, the best way to do it is to type into the comment field for whatever platform that you happen to be on. We've got a lot of questions coming in, and I'm going to tell you we'll probably get to a lot of them, and you might find that some of your questions are being asked by other folks who might be asking the same thing. So, but don't hesitate to put those in. And I think what we'll also try to do is if there's a specific concern or request you have, we'll try to go ahead and maybe route that to staff to make sure that that's in play as well. But one more time, just a quick reminder, I think that what we would love to have you do is to put any questions you've got into the comment field. We've got staff here in the office who are looking at these questions, and we're going to try to put that into the mix of what the Congresswoman can ask about. And so that will be probably in the next hopper here for anybody who wants to be asking anything. So we'll watch for those to come in. But we also happen to have right now a question coming in from Bruce in Pembroke Pines. And Bruce is asking, do you believe, Congresswoman, that the VA will ever have their care facilities fully staffed? And I know that VA issues are just so front and center for so many folks back in our district. So I think this is a question that a lot of people have.
Okay, and Bruce, thank you so much for that question. You may know, I'm not sure that everyone knowing, so watching it knows that my main role in committee, I serve as a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, is as the ranking member, the lead Democrat on the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Subcommittee. That is a role that makes me responsible alongside the other committee members and the chair, Judge Carter from Texas, who I work very well with. He's a Republican who serves as the chairman. We're responsible for the entire life cycle of an individual's service in the military, during active duty, all the way through their time as a veteran, and then through their eventual burial in a military cemetery or a veteran cemetery. And that is a responsibility that I take very seriously. It's a tremendous honor, and making sure that we can have the most respectful and committed programs that can ensure that we take care of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and were willing to put their lives on the line to represent our country and protect our country is critical. What the administration has been doing is dishonoring that commitment. They are using VA funds as their own slush fund, essentially. They're moving money from VA medical care into privatized care accounts. That's undercutting the trust and reliable medical care that veterans receive at the VA. My biggest concern, and I know our major veterans organization's concern is as well, is the potential that the administration would try to privatize the VA. Veterans really, whenever they are surveyed, they prefer getting their health care through the VA, at a VA facility, whether it's a VA hospital or a VA health clinic, because most of the time they are served by someone at the VA who is, all their patients are veterans. They understand how veterans think. They know what makes veterans tick. Many of, at least a third, if not more, of the VA employees are veterans themselves. So, making sure that instead of investing in hiring and retention efforts, which unfortunately Republicans have been refusing to do so that we can decrease the wait times and expand capacity, instead the administration is pushing veterans into an already saturated private market in which now it's actually taking longer to get an appointment in the community than it does to get an appointment at VA. So just this week, the Washington Post reported that VA will be eliminating tens of thousands of unfilled healthcare roles. If they start collapsing the VA, then the service and the wait times are going to get the service will be worse, the wait times will be longer. And in this next upcoming fiscal year, 2026 VA funding bill, which has become law, and that I was very active and had a key role in helping to shape, I was able to secure provisions to make sure that we rein in the administration's lawless actions and limit their ability to transfer funds, because they have really been very irresponsible about, instead of following Congress's direction like they're supposed to because Congress has the power of the purse, the administration has been acting like Congress doesn't exist, and as a result, moving money around without the appropriate oversight from Congress and ignoring our spending directions, and that's unacceptable. So we tightened the reins and we gave them a 1% limitation, transfer limitation, which they're not happy about, but that's what our oversight role is all about, because we want to make sure that we're looking out for the best care for our veterans as possible.
Great, thanks for that comprehensive answer, Congresswoman. I appreciate it. We've got a lot of questions about the Venezuela situation, and I'm going to probably just try to get to a little bit right now, but this specific question comes from a member of the Venezuelan community, and they wrote something to this effect. Speaking for families from many other nationalities who live in this country, work hard, pay taxes, and strive to keep their families united, what advice would you give to us to continue moving forward without fear, and what real opportunities exist for us to live and work with dignity and stability while complying with the law?
Well, I have spent a great deal of time on this issue, particularly since not only fighting to make sure that TPS was granted by the Biden administration and extended in the last administration, but to make sure that we could try to help Venezuelans keep their TPS designation here during the Trump administration. But unfortunately, Trump has betrayed Venezuelans. He lied that he was only going to go after the worst of the worst, and the criminals. Instead, he has yanked legal status away from Tepecianos, people who hold TPS, who did it the right way, who followed all the rules, who've had background checks, who have been vetted, and who are contributing to our economy, who are business owners, who are people who have had their families here. And at the end of the day, collective punishment of all Venezuelans, like the administration is doing, and painting every Venezuelan who's here as a terrorist, calling them dirtbags like Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security did, that's revolting. It's disgusting. It's similar to the way that Trump lied about Haitians eating pets. And now sending people to Venezuela while threatening to start a war there. I mean, he's designating Maduro as a terrorist, but then at the same time taking TPS away, protective status away from 600,000 Venezuelans who they're saying the conditions in Venezuela have improved enough to return to their country. Well, he's bringing supposedly the largest naval armada in modern times right to the shoreline of Venezuela, and labeling Maduro a terrorist. But it's safer to send hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans back because things are better. I mean, the hypocrisy is mind-blowing. It is important that everybody know all TPS and parole recipients pass criminal background checks, and Trump is taking away by rounding up all of these people. And by the way, last weekend when I was home, I mean, there were about 200 reported individuals who were rounded up by ICE in Davie. I mean, there were people you had enforcement actions stopping lawn care vehicles and people being taken away in handcuffs. And listen, he promised to go after the worst of the worst, going after hard-working people who are doing nothing but trying to make a better way of life for themselves and their family, and are fleeing terror that Trump's own administration has said occurs is disgusting, and shows that he was never really going to uphold that promise. So the best thing that folks can do who've lost their status: keep your head down, consult a lawyer, know your rights, let the legal process play out for you as an individual. And you should tell citizen friends, the family, neighbors, to speak up. We all need to be speaking up and speaking out that this is not what Trump promised he would do. Most of the people, the overwhelming majority of people who have been arrested and detained and are being deported, have never committed any crime at all. And we need to demand Florida Republicans like Ashley Moody and Rick Scott, our 2 U.S. senators, that they defend Venezuelans. We all need to be defending our Venezuelan neighbors. I have lived in my hometown of Weston, affectionately known as Westonzuela, for 27 years. My kids grew up with Venezuelan kids from Venezuelan families, And we are really all one big family out in our community and across Broward County. And I know that I've been fighting to make sure that people who I consider family are able to be protected and remain in the United States. The other thing is I've filed legislation that would reestablish TPS for Venezuelans. It's called the TPS for Venezuelan Act. It's a bipartisan bill that would allow for permanent residence to be established after TPS is reestablished. And I also led more than 130 Democrats in an amicus brief to both the Supreme Court as well as the Court of Appeals to really make sure that we can stand up to extend TPS and prevent the administration from taking it away. I've also been engaged in conducting oversight of the brutal conditions at the Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center. There's horrific torture accusations coming out of there, and the abuses by ICE are outrageous and unacceptable. This is the United States of America. At the end of the day, people have the right to due process, and deporting people back to a dictatorship that Trump has designated as a terrorist, to a Maduro regime that has seized power and is not the rightful president and is unacceptable, and I'm not going to stand for it.
Thanks, Congresswoman. I bet that's very helpful to a lot of folks. I think that the offshoot of this Venezuela discussion came up, I believe, today with the war powers votes that you folks took. I think a lot of folks who might be watching news and hearing about this, can you sort of walk through what that vote was about today and how you approached it?
Yeah, we had a vote today that asserted Congress's authority in the Constitution that is exclusive to the Congress to declare war. And right now we have Trump engaging in illegal military strikes in the Caribbean, which are, killing people in what they say are drug boats without evidence or due process. Those are seizures that are normally handled by our Coast Guard, and they're a law enforcement operation. And you're able to do, those boats are normally stopped when they're suspected of running drugs, and the boats are boarded, and the individuals are arrested. And they also can help lead to, and have led to, hundreds and hundreds of tons of drugs. And you've seen the Coast Guard in Port Everglades announce, and I've been on the ships that they amassed those drugs that they were able to recover many times. That's the way it should be done. We do things through due process in this country, and we seek evidence and we prosecute based on that evidence. Blowing up boats and engaging in extrajudicial killings is what Maduro does, not what the United States does. And look, I have no illusions about the brutality of the Maduro dictatorship. Venezuelans voted for a peaceful democratic transition, and Maduro is clinging to power, and he's doing it through repression and corruption. But the Congress needed to reassert our authority. We had a bipartisan vote, a pretty significant bipartisan vote today, on a war powers resolution that would say that the president, to continue his engagement in military action against these drug boats, and if he goes further, where he's now talking about blockades and invading Venezuela on land, that he has to come to Congress and request our authorization. That's the way our Constitution works. That's the way our founding fathers established. It's just hypocritical at the end of the day to say that it's safe to send hundreds of thousands of people back to Venezuela, and I have to go back to this. Revoking TPS for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans who are here because they fled a country that they feared persecution would continue to occur to them and their families. Turning around and saying that it's safe enough to go back is hypocrisy. And Trump seems more concerned about maximizing oil profits and separating families than bringing Maduro to justice and helping Venezuela transition back to democracy. And that's what I'm going to continue to fight for. But the bottom line is, in our Constitution, no president can launch military action without the consent of Congress. And that's the vote we just cast on the floor today.
Thanks, Congresswoman, for answering that one hot off the presses with News Today. I think one tougher question that is sort of down the road, but it's probably one that's on a lot of folks' mind, is what are we looking at in terms of heading towards another possible government shutdown on January 30th? Can you just really sort of frame that for us a little bit and give folks an idea of what to expect and some of the issues involved?
Yeah. So government funding runs out on January 30th. And so when we come back, Congress is going to adjourn, the House is going to adjourn tomorrow, and we'll be back, I believe, on January 6th. We passed funding bills. The bill that I am the ranking member for, the military construction and VA bill, the agriculture bill, and the legislative branch budget, budget funding bills. Those are all law now. So even if there is a government shutdown, I'm not sure whether we think that'll happen, but it'll be a partial shutdown at this point. We still have to fund a lot of crucial programs, including healthcare and transportation and infrastructure, housing, national security, and my focus is to continue to fight to make sure that we can lower people's costs, their everyday costs, make life more affordable for everyone around their kitchen table. I didn't vote for the spending package that ended the government shutdown because Speaker Johnson wouldn't allow a vote on extending those Affordable Care Act tax credits. I'm just not going to let the people's healthcare costs explode and price them out of being able to go to the doctor when they're sick and catch illness early. Like I said, I know firsthand when you catch something early. It's part of the reason I'm still able to sit here today. And it's just unacceptable that we're allowing those. We're going to go home tomorrow, and the Republicans have refused to even allow a vote on the extension of those tax credits that make healthcare more affordable. So I'll continue to fight for that. But we've been working in the Appropriations Committee to bring the committees together, to bring Republicans and Democrats together on the House side and the Senate side. We'll only have a few weeks to do that when we come back, but we have to make sure that we do everything we can to get our work done. We have to have Republicans who are cooperative to ensure that what is included in these spending bills is actually going to focus on making life better and more affordable for all Americans, instead of focusing on culture war battles that have nothing to do with what we should spend to make life better for Americans.
Great, and I think that the affordability crisis that you just alluded to there is one that's really sort of top of mind for everybody. And I think that if you could just sort of talk through what you think are some of the other key components or broader issues involved with the affordability issue, the issue that, of course, Trump has called a hoax. Could you go ahead and talk through that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I mean, that really stings so many people when they hear the President of the United States saying that affordability, the issue of affordability, is a hoax. I mean, I shop in my supermarket every week for my family and, cook dinner every Sunday night. I can tell you there's nothing that is a hoax when it comes to affordability. Grocery costs are skyrocketing. You have utility bills that are increasing. The cost of housing is breathtaking. You have too many people whose kids, when they finish college or when they finish their secondary school, are still needing to live at home through most of their 20s, so they can save money, because we're like about a decade later for most people when they can actually amass enough money to put a down payment on a house. So instead of like my husband and I, who were in our mid-20s when we got married and bought a house, that's about a decade later in most folks' life now, because of, if they can even buy a house in their mid-30s. It's just an unacceptable situation, and we need to come together and focus on really trying to bring the cost of housing, utilities, groceries, healthcare down. Energy prices are through the roof, and so I've joined my Democratic colleagues in signing on to an amicus brief. That's a brief that you send to the courts to support a particular position when it comes to various lawsuits that have filed, but the tariff tax policy of Donald Trump has dramatically increased people's costs, because so much of what comes in from overseas comes in with this massive explosive tariff that is illegal, essentially, because tariff policy is actually the purview of Congress. Congress has designated the president some of that authority, but he is using a law inappropriately that he is essentially declaring an emergency where one does not exist, that he thinks gives him the ability to put massive tariffs on all of these goods coming into our country. And the administration will likely lose that lawsuit in court. And then we're going to need to hold the line in Congress to make sure that we don't give him that authority by changing the law. That's going to be critical. And if that lawsuit is successful and the court rules that Trump does not have the authority to levy those tariffs, and that it's really Congress's responsibility, we have to stand firm, and we have to do it in a bipartisan way, that we're not going to give the president the power to drive up the costs of nearly everything in this country. And that's a huge part of what has made life unaffordable for Americans. And we have an opportunity to reverse it. And I know where I stand. I'm certainly not going to be voting to give the president back that power that he's usurping right now. Also, we're continuing to try to make sure Democrats are, to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. I support legislation called the Lowering Drug Costs for American Families Act. It would build on the landmark drug pricing reforms that we were able to pass during the Biden administration. That was a huge deal. I've talked about it all over the district. In Medicare, unfortunately, it didn't apply because Republicans opposed it to non-Medicare health insurance policies, but drug prices specifically are now able to be negotiated between the federal government and the pharmaceutical companies in Medicare, so that we have lowered really dozens of different the monthly cost of different drugs, dozens of different drugs. And even though the Trump administration has actually resisted that negotiation, we've been able to push for that to continue. And so a lot of those costs of drugs like insulin and Eliquis and many of the kidney and heart drugs their prices have gone down, as well as the GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and some others. That was the last round of drugs whose costs were just brought down in Medicare, which is a really, really big deal, because obviously people's health improves when they have an opportunity to lose weight. We're also pushing for the American Energy Independence and Affordability Act, and that's going to reinstate the clean energy tax credits. The Trump administration rolled that back, that we had passed into law in the Big Ugly Law this past summer. I mean, why are we going to go back to dirty energy? I mean, clean energy is where we need to continue to go. Belching more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and the environment is just going to drive up all kinds of problems, including the overheating of our environment and sea level rise, which is a big issue in South Florida. I mean, we see so much volatility when it comes to our king tide seasons, and you have sea level rise that is causing more people to have to build and rebuild their seawalls in our community. It's just a huge problem, and we need to come together and really focus on making sure that we have more affordable access to clean energy instead of going in reverse and investing in fossil fuels and reopening coal plants and now proposing to drill for oil 100 miles off the coast of Florida, which we thankfully have universal opposition in our congressional delegation, bipartisan opposition, because the Trump administration has actually proposed drilling for oil, allowing oil drilling just 100 miles off the coast, the west coast of Florida. We saw what happened with Deepwater Horizon. I mean, that kind of distance from our shore will ruin our beaches, destroy our tourism-based economy, destroy our environment. It's just unacceptable. We have to continue to fight it.
Great. Thanks for that answer, Congresswoman. I think we've got a handful of related questions, and it's about anti-Semitism. I'm sure it's really on the minds of folks with Australia top of mind. What can you do, and what are you doing and working on to ensure the safety of Jewish people?
Well, as a member of the Jewish community myself, this is such a deeply personal issue. I know how horrified I was, and so many in our community, people, Jews across the globe, and non-Jews across the globe, were horrified by that devastating shooting in Australia, targeting the Jewish community on the first night of Hanukkah. The rise of anti-Semitism, excuse me, is truly it's become a global crisis. It's not just a threat to Jews, but it's a threat to our democracy, and it's a threat to everyone on our planet. I mean, we have too many leaders in countries like Australia, in countries like our own, frankly, who are ignoring the pleas of Jews who are seeing the kind of explosive growth in anti-Semitic attacks. In Australia, they faced many violent anti-Semitic attacks, and even the rhetoric. I mean, the heated rhetoric and the dismissal of the notion that saying something like from the river to the sea or globalize the intifada doesn't have an impact, and suggesting that, oh, that's just an expression, and trying to redefine those expressions. What it does is that it fans the flames of anti-Semitism and discriminatory and hateful actions that result, sadly, in attacks like what happened in Sydney on Bondi Beach. And so I'm doing everything I can in Congress to fight anti-Semitism, doing what I can in our own community. I have hosted and led an anti-Semitism summit. We've just had the third anti-Semitism summit. Now the County Commission and American Jewish Committee and other organizations are involved in co-hosting it as well. Those summits have been attended by hundreds of people, including Jews and non-Jews and people from all walks of life, because we have to come together in a unified way to fight hate. Anti-Semitism has always been the canary in the coal mine. When you have attacks on the Jewish community, it's not far behind that attacks on other communities are coming right behind them. I have helped found this year, finally, the Congressional Jewish Caucus, so we can have greater coordination among Jewish members and our colleagues to raise awareness and help us hold the Trump administration accountable here in the U.S. For anti-Semitism and extremism. I fought successfully to boost by $30 million the nonprofit security grant funding. Unfortunately, the Trump administration is not proposing enough funding, and they have actually held the funding that was appropriated last year and not distributed it, and they're trying to put really unrelated criteria on how those funds are used. It's really ridiculous and dangerous, and so we have to make sure that funding gets out and that it's increased, reflective of the threats that have been leveled, not just against the Jewish community, but there are mosques that face threats, there are churches Christian churches that face threats. We have to make sure people have the ability to protect themselves, both the infrastructure hardening as well as making sure that security is available at those institutions. Nobody should have to fear for their life to attend an event at a house of worship or at a community center that is affiliated with a religion. And I've also fought for Holocaust education funds, because if you look at the percentages today of how low a percentage that the younger folks in our society there are that believe that the Holocaust happened, that don't know what the Holocaust was, and that doubt that 6 million Jews were murdered and slaughtered during the Holocaust. We have a lot of work to do to make sure that as the elderly, the extreme elderly Holocaust survivors pass on, and we have fewer and fewer of them. We have one of the largest Holocaust survivor populations in the country in our region in South Florida. As the real life stories, firsthand accounts, and those individuals pass on, we have to make sure, it's more important than ever, that the next generation of Americans and people across the globe understand what happened, so we can make sure it never happens again.
Great, thanks, Congresswoman. I think that tied into this question, a lot of folks are really anxious about how many guns are out there and what can be done to put some common sense reforms in play. Can you talk a little bit about what you see on that horizon and maybe some specific legislation that you've been working
Sure.
on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish I could say that there's been good progress, but unfortunately, we seem to be going in the wrong direction in Florida. I mean, the fact that an open carry, that open carry is now allowed, where people can just, wear guns out in the open, bring them into, public spaces. Even some retail establishments are allowing that, and that's just absolutely unacceptable, makes life more dangerous, not safer. In a community like ours that lived through Parkland and the shooting that so many people forget about, the mass shooting in Fort Lauderdale Airport just the year before in 2015, we need to make sure that we continue to push for common sense gun safety reforms. After Parkland, the state legislature thankfully did that. We just passed the most significant gun safety reforms during President Biden's administration that allowed for red flag laws so that guns can be taken away when a court reviews the threat that someone presents to themselves or those around them, and significant investments in mental health funding that unfortunately the Trump administration is withholding and rolling back. I mean, if we don't have mental health funding that is absolutely essential, that was a bipartisan push that was successful in making sure that was included in that bipartisan gun safety law, Safer Communities Act. If we don't address the mental health issue, then these shootings are going to continue to happen. But we have to, there is a all of the above strategy that has to be taken to gun safety. We just saw 2 horrific shootings at Brown University this past weekend and the Jewish community that was targeted in Sydney, Australia. I will continue to push for more common sense gun safety laws, but comprehensive approaches to ensure that we are not allowing the worship at the altar of the NRA. Rank and file Republicans just roll over whenever they come around, and we just have to continue to fight. I sponsored Jamie's Law, which requires instant background checks on the purchase of ammunition, just like when someone purchases a gun. It's actually already illegal under federal law for the same reasons that you can't buy a gun if you're a domestic violence abuser, if you're a felon, or you have a mental health adjudication, then you can't purchase a gun. You can't purchase, under federal law, ammunition either, but there are no background checks to make sure that we can enforce it. And the only way that you can kill someone with a gun is if you have ammunition. And if we put those obstacles, putting obstacles in the path of individuals, focusing on safety measures that keep people out of harm's way is absolutely critical when it comes to addressing these horrible shootings.
Great, thanks, Congresswoman. I think that there is a lot of frustration in a lot of the comments that we're seeing from folks, and part of the solution is to get folks out to register and to vote. But we've got a more specific question in that space. Steph from Hollywood is asking what's being done and what can be done to ensure that mail-in ballots are going to be available for those who request them.
Okay, there's a few important things that people need to understand on this front with mail-in ballots. I'll address it at the state level as well as at the federal level. So at the state level, about 3 years ago now, Ron DeSantis and Republicans in the state legislature changed election law, voter registration law, and now everyone who wants a vote-by-mail ballot, to cast a vote-by-mail ballot, has to sign up through your supervisor of elections to get a vote-by-mail ballot every single election cycle. It used to be that there was a permanent vote-by-mail sign-up. That doesn't exist anymore. So once January 1st of the off-election year comes, election's over, following, the January comes around, put something on your calendar to remind you to go back online on your supervisor of elections website and sign up again for the all elections vote by mail ballot to be sent to you. So then you'll get a vote by mail ballot over the course of that 2-year period in any election cycle, in any election that occurs. At the federal level, there is a lawsuit that has been filed by Republicans that would, and now this is already the way it works in Florida, although I think it should change, but Republicans are trying through a federal lawsuit, and the Supreme Court has this case now, to say that every mail-in ballot would only be valid in any state in the country, even states where now they allow for ballots to be received as long as they were postmarked by Election Day. This lawsuit says all ballots have to be in by the close of Election Day on Election Day, and any that come in after that would be invalid. There are about, I think it's 13 or 14 states that allow for mail-in ballots, if they're postmarked, to be counted after Election Day passes. That we should be making sure that more people have access to the franchise, not fewer. But if you voted on Election Day, which you do if you are postmarking your ballot, on or before Election Day, your vote should count. I mean, we have entire states like Oregon. Excuse me, I'm getting a little scratchy. We have states like Oregon, Washington State, Arizona. I believe there's a lot of vote by mail that occurs in Colorado as well, that nearly only vote by mail or mostly vote by mail. Those states absolutely all have a postmark by Election Day requirement and can receive a ballot afterwards for it to count. So that's already law, the way it works. In Florida, your ballot has to be in by 7 p.m. Here in Broward County, we can request our ballots online through the Supervisor of Elections office. You can call on the phone, or you can do it through the mail. So the phone number to sign back up for vote by mail is 954-357-7055. If we can put that number on the screen, guys, that would be very helpful. And then you can go to browardvotes.gov, which is the Supervisor of Elections, Joe Scott's website, and you can go to the button that is vote by mail, the vote by mail button, and sign back up right online. So put a reminder in your phone, on your fridge. I'll be sending mail out to remind people to sign back up for vote by mail, and remind your friends and family. Just, take a minute, go through all of your friends and family, send them a reminder that if they want to vote by mail, they should, here are the steps to sign back up. It's really critical.
Great. Congresswoman, we are about to run out of time, so I'm going to
Okay.
just put a couple more questions in place. So maybe
Sounds
just
good.
keep in mind
Okay.
the sand is running out of the hourglass. This
All right.
one comes from McDevil's Advocate, and it might be, he sent this in maybe with a little bit of snark tonight, but he was wondering what have the Democrats accomplished in the minority this year?
Oh, okay, great. I mean, I went through a bunch of my accomplishments at the start of the virtual town hall, and I'll be sharing those accomplishments, on my social media over the next couple of weeks or so. But I'll just give you 2 examples of legislation that I've introduced and that is headed to becoming law, as well as gotten significant funding to make sure that it can be implemented. My Fallen Service Members Religious Heritage Restoration Act, that has wide bipartisan support. It has support from the Veteran Service Organization community. What it does is it corrects a grave injustice that has occurred where improperly buried Jewish service members, military service members, who were buried under a Latin cross instead of the Star of David. It would enable us to make sure that they can correct their headstones with the Star of David. And I was able to get $500,000 funded every year for the next 5 years, but at the end of the day, I think we'll probably be able to get that accomplished for the next 10 years to ensure that the research can be done and that those folks, and this is dating back all the way to World War I, World War II, and then going forward. It passed the House and the Senate. The Senate passed a slightly different version, so we're on the 10-yard line, but I expect that bill to head to the president's desk in early 2026. I also passed, as I think I briefly mentioned, the Protect Our Children Reauthorization Act. That passed the House, and it just passed the Senate today. It is part of the National Defense Authorization Act. I've been working hard on that issue for many years. Passed the original law in 2007. Worked closely with my Republican colleague, Senator Cornyn from Texas, and we worked together for many years fighting sexual predators who stalk children online and who actually lure them in person and engage in horrific exchanges of child pornography pictures, which are really crime scene photos, and making sure that we have the Internet Crimes Against Children task forces, which are law enforcement coalitions that work together in regions across the country to be able to catch and arrest these criminals and shut down these criminal, sexual predator enterprises is absolutely critical. And so that bill is headed to the president's desk. It will be signed into law. So even in the minority, you have to be able to reach across the aisle, work together. I work hard to make sure I build and maintain relationships with Republican colleagues so that we can get things done. We don't disagree on absolutely everything. And, we have to stop treating each other like the enemy when we're really just the opposition, and we just have different. We should. I've been in the legislative bodies over the years, and I know what it's like to just be a member of the opposition and not treat one another like the enemy, and that's what I'm going to continue to try to do, and fight hard to make sure that I can bring home resources to our community, and also make sure that I can pass good law to help make people's lives better.
Great, thank you for that. We're going to use this sort of as our last question to go to.
Okay.
And it really reflects a lot of frustration and sadness, really, that's out there. I've heard someone describe what's going on in our world right now as we're trying to pay our bills, be with our family, go to work in one reality, and then the other reality, we just see stuff going on around us that leaves us speechless, that you just can't believe the cruelty and the lawlessness that's going on. We had John tonight text in a question where he mentioned it's obvious that you're doing all that you can to fix this and make life better and cheaper for everybody, but the lawlessness is just so startling and stunning. How can people stay encouraged? Because it looks really bleak out there right now.
So John and everyone listening tonight, one thing that I just want everyone who I have the privilege of representing to know is that it is my job to make sure that I can instill confidence in you, in our government, in what we're doing to help make your life better. Even if you only have confidence in me, the person that represents you in our nation's capital, then at least you know that there's one person in there swinging for you and that's going to stand up for what you care about and what you believe in. And quite frankly, that means everyone. It doesn't matter what party you're in. I represent everyone. We take care of everyone who calls our office dealing with a challenge that might be their most important problem that they're facing. And so if I've established a little bit more confidence in folks in their government going to bat for them, then that's an accomplishment that I'm proud of. But I know things look really bleak right now. It's so frustrating for all of us to see such really blatant lawlessness go without any accountability. I just really feel like I spend so much time standing up and speaking out about the lawlessness and about the power grab that has been occurring in this White House, because the balance of power, the system of checks and balances that our founding fathers established, they established it for a reason, because they came from an all-powerful authority in a king. And they wanted to make sure that there was a system of checks and balances so that the power was retained by the people. That's what the House of Representatives is all about. And so the two things that keep me fighting, that I want everyone to think about and know that we've made progress on. So all is not lost. The first is that when we have fought back, we've been able to get Trump and his cronies to stumble. They have not been able to get their way on absolutely everything. I mentioned my effort to my successful effort with others to block the Social Security benefits cut, disability benefits cut. That was really important. When the American people rose up against those DOGE cuts, even Musk admitted that DOGE didn't amount to anything, and not much of anything, and that it was pretty much a waste of time. And DOGE is gone now, and it went away. It's not that the administration isn't still trying to fire thousands of people. They are. I'm fighting cuts at the VA and really terrible reorganizations that are trying to push the VA to privatization. But Trump's a bully, and he only picks on people who don't fight back. So we have to continue to stand up. They're expecting us, and they want us to get exhausted and to just be so tired from the bullying that we just stand down. Well, there's no way I'm standing down. And I come home every week and I shop in my Publix and, run around the community, and I get so much strength. I draw so much strength from the feedback that I get from our people in our community. And it really, it recharges my batteries to go back to DC and keep up the fight. And the second is something that my colleagues and I are already thinking about. When Democrats take back control of Congress, particularly the House of Representatives, how are we going to we're thinking through, how are we going to hold people in power accountable for their corruption? What laws do we need to pass? It's obvious that the Founding Fathers never envisioned a lawless president like we have now. We've never experienced, for the most part, in our history, an administration that just ignored constitutional principles and that just blew off the law and attempted to do whatever it is that they could to amass power, to cut funding, to fire people indiscriminately, to line their own pockets and enrich themselves. And so there's going to be absolute need to establish some guardrails and some accountability measures and put real strength in the laws that enable us to stop a president who is out of control and who has run amok. What can we learn from the weaknesses in our current legal framework so we can make sure that we have the ability to hold the powerful to account when they're just ignoring what they're responsible for implementing? I really feel like we need to show the American people a hopeful vision that help is on the way. And right now, because what matters the most to people is what's in front of them right now and what they're dealing with every day. And that is that if you're leaving your house and on your list of things to do is to go food shopping, to pay your electric bill, to figure out how you're going to cover your health insurance costs, and to make sure that you can put gas in your car and pay your rent, nothing much else matters. So laser focusing on making life more affordable for real, not just saying you're going to do it. I'm a show me person, not a tell me person. So really focusing on ways that we can do that, particularly with healthcare. First things first. So sorry. First things first is to extend those Affordable Care Act tax credits so we can make sure we don't have explosions in people's healthcare costs. That's job one for me, right in front and center. It's just so personal for me. My parents always told me, if you don't have your health, Debbie, you don't have anything. I unfortunately found that out firsthand 18 years ago. But now I'm an 18-year breast cancer survivor, and it's really, I'm a survivor because I had the ability to go right to the doctor when I found the lump myself, and I had coverage to be able to get it checked out. And I'm still here as a result because I was able to do that. And everyone in this country, the greatest country in the world, the country that is the richest in the world, should make sure that everybody has the ability to do that.
Great. Thank you, Congresswoman. I appreciate that. You want to just say one last closing word before we sign off tonight? We took a lot of questions and covered a lot of territory, but if you have any final thoughts, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. I just want to thank everyone who's watching tonight for the privilege of representing you in our nation's capital. And I assume we also probably have some folks who are not in my congressional district, so thanks for joining us too. I first ran for office, honestly, for the most corny of reasons, to make the world a better place and to help make other people's lives better. That is why I wake up, and it's my why every single day. To go up and just try to figure out, how do I make your life easier, better, more affordable? What problems can I solve for you today? What ideas can I get from being home in my district and hearing feedback from folks about what the most important challenges are? And so, look for me out in the community. If you see me, which hopefully you'll be able to stop me and say hello, and just bend my ear a little bit. It's what I've always tried to do. Accessibility is absolutely critical, and give us a call or send us an email if you have any questions or comments or just want to give us some feedback. Thanks so much, everyone. This is not the first virtual town hall we've done. We've done telephone town halls and virtual town halls, and a lot of in-person stuff over the course of this year, and we'll keep it up. I'm going to keep up the fight. Thanks for having my back. Please know that I will always have yours. Thanks, everyone, and happy holidays.